Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling-up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's eckfeldt.com/thrive.
Hey everyone, Bruce Eckfeldt here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so we can let you know when the next video is posted. You can also check us out at eckfeldt.com for more great content. With that, let's go check out the video.
You're listening to Thinking Outside the Bud, where we speak with entrepreneurs, investors, thought leaders, researchers, advocates, and policymakers who are finding new and exciting ways for cannabis to positively impact business, society, and culture. And now, here is your host, business coach, Bruce Eckfeldt.
Welcome everyone, this is Thinking Outside the Bud. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt, I'm your host, and today we're here with Jenny Argie, and Jenny is founder and CEO of Baked at Home, and we're going to find out a little bit about her business and her story, and she's got some really exciting things going on. Jenny, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start, because I always like to kind of hear how people kind of got into business, how they got into cannabis. Give people a sense of really what the story was. How did you find yourself founder and CEO of a cannabis business?
All right, awesome. So I think I might just go back a little bit before launching Jenny's Baked at Home and start. For maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I exited a company called Argie, and I was the designer and manufacturer, the CEO of the company. Mm-hmm. Started when my child was conceived, and it was just going to start with maybe 1 or 2 products, designing furniture that I would want to use. And then it turned into a raging business after I found out that the industry really didn't have anything that like I was doing. So a sort of new kid on the block, and it was modern children's furniture, and it was green and organic, and it was ideal for small spaces, and it was good for city dwellers. New Yorkers, people in California had small spaces, but had a design aesthetic. So that I did for 12 years, and I really learned what it was like to have an idea for a product and then take it to market. So it's really important to understand my background in product and my passion for designing products. Yeah. So I was in business with my ex-husband. I separated from my ex-husband about 3 or 4 years ago, and I had started a couple different businesses that were in the children's space. And while doing that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I started looking around, and it sort of went back to Argentine. When I got pregnant, I couldn't really find any furniture that was designed well and organic and wasn't filled with formaldehyde and all that good stuff. So I looked around for edibles that I could do-it-yourself kits that I could use while I was going through the cancer treatment. Yeah. And so I couldn't find any healthy edibles, especially do-it-yourself kit, because in New York at the time, we weren't even medical when I was diagnosed. So I set out to design a baking mix that was gluten-free, cacao chocolate, high protein. And then the really biggest part of it was that I could teach myself how to microdose. So I hadn't used cannabis since I was in high school. Yeah. And cannabis has changed so much since the 80s. Yeah. From the THC content to it's just so much more sophisticated now on the grow end. Yep. So I was like most of your listeners who haven't really used a lot of cannabis, it was intimidated by using cannabis because it just seemed such an extreme. Either I was going to be super high and out of control, or maybe I wasn't going to feel anything. So I wanted to be able to find the middle ground. So I designed this mix and I started playing with it. I knew absolutely nothing about cannabis, but I did know about product. And even though I came from a background, my grandfather he was Greek and he owned restaurants, and my brother went to the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park, New York, and is a chef. So food is something that's been very prevalent in my family, and I love to cook. I never was really a big baker, but was a really big cook, more of a savory than sweet. Mm-hmm. But I really started to dive into the nutritional aspect of how cannabis could help me. And my cancer progressed so fast that I ended up having a double mastectomy.
Yeah.
And then I was told to go on a drug called tamoxifen. And the tamoxifen is a hormone replacement therapy, but has tons and tons of side effects.
Yeah.
And I chose not to go on tamoxifen for 5 years and studied a lot about the research that was being done in Israel and some in Canada, but more in Israel, on reducing cancer cells from adhering to mass with a high CBD diet. Mm-hmm. And I might transpose hemp and CBD at times in this podcast because it's really just a euphemism now for CBD because of the federal law still prohibits anything that comes from cannabis as, so federally illegal. And so I would love to educate your listeners. If you do see hemp, ask the manufacturer, what kind of hemp is it? Full spectrum hemp, meaning does it have 0.3 THC in it? And is it being extracted from the flower, AKA the bud? Mm-hmm. And that is what I do. All my products are full spectrum hemp. So again, I chose to design products for my personal use, so every product I have, if it's a salve, it is because I suffer from eczema. Mm-hmm. So our body has receptors both on our dermis and internally. So if you ingest cannabis, CBD, or hemp or THC, you're going to have a different effect. The hemp is going to /CBD is going to hit certain receptors, and then the THC is going to hit other receptors. And that's sort of and maybe I'll go back here in a minute and talk about the different cannabinoids.
Yeah, so I'm curious how because I love the story. I love the idea that, taking what you've learned in a previous business, the idea around product and how do you design and kind of manufacture a product based on a target sort of quality and set of attributes and product attributes you're going for, and applying this to the cannabis market. But there's a huge amount of knowledge around the science, around agriculture, around the medical, pharmaceutical properties of this. How did you actually go about? I mean, you mentioned some of the research that you were reading from mainly Israel. I know Canada has some too, but how did you actually go about educating yourself and learning about the product and learning about the science and learning about the medicine? Because I think that's a big challenge for a lot of folks coming in the Canada space is, how do I learn this stuff? What was your path?
Right. I really am. I'm telling you how I got from Argentine, and there were other businesses that I had probably done before that leading up to this. I am a serial entrepreneur. I don't believe that there's anything out there. If you're passionate about it, you will learn it. Yeah. You don't need a PhD in medicine. You don't need a PhD in business or MBA. You just need to get into the grid of it and start to learn it. So I knew nothing about furniture. I got my master's in painting and sculpture, so I had a little sense. Yeah. I got a little bit of sense of cooking. So it's really, and I tell the listeners above and beyond, when people say, well, I want to get into the cannabis space, what do you think is the number one ancillary or touching the plant product that you would do? And I say it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what you're passionate and bring what you're passionate, whether that's HR, whether that's accounting, whether that's designing websites for. You will be passionate. If you're passionate about cannabis, then pick what you're good at and then run with it. So how did I do it? I literally just started reading and everything I could get my hands on. But at the same time, I outreached, because I had done a business before. I wasn't intimidated about talking to everybody under the sun in the cannabis space. I didn't care if you were Willie Nelson, I was going to walk up and talk to you, or if you were a senator. So I spent an enormous amount of time doing an in-home model, and I still do it, where I go to people's homes and in a very intimate setting, I educate people on how cannabis became illegal, the history behind it, where we are on a legal level, where it's going, and and I put in quotes the medical, because we're not FDA approved, attributes that it has. So doing that and reaching out to people, talk as much as you can. And that, both being an advocate and just talking, people shared their stories and also shared their knowledge. And then there's lots of symposiums out there, lots of panels. So, I would show up to some of those, but really getting out there and talking as much as possible. I mean, they have everything from where there's the in New York, there's Cannagather events, there's Women's Grow, there's all sorts of events that are happening that you can go at a really affordable price and learn more and talk. So that's how I got into it, was setting up these in-home models and putting myself in the forefront of being an expert in the cannabis space, which meant I had to learn really fast.
And I like the idea that it's taking this intimate, small kind of gathering approach to being able to have the discussions and do some education. What are the common things that come up in those conversations in terms of the questions people have, I guess maybe the thinking that they have or the biases that they have that you kind of work on? What are the big ones that come up in those gatherings?
That's an awesome question, because we all probably have a preconceived notion of what people are going to. I mean, you and I are both parents. I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. This is that age where it's a very sensitive topic to talk about drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
And your mom is in the cannabis space. What kind of conversation do I have here? And I stand up in front of people that run the gamut from, being maybe 25 years old to being 65 years old. Mm-hmm. So I have such a generation to speak to. And I would have thought that the younger generation would definitely be more accepting, and that we would have sort of this just say no to drugs Reagan generation. And I would really have to break through with kind of giving them how ludicrous it was that it became illegal and that it was purely politics and economics, back in the early 1900s, and that it had nothing to do with prohibition and all of the stigma around it. But that actually, people love to hear this story, and they love to hear how marijuana got its name and all of that kind of stuff. But that's just anecdotal, and it's cute. But they really want to know the medical benefits that cannabis can have. And so that's really, in the end, that's what I talk most about. I speak to how it can help as a sleep aid, how it can help for eczema, how it can help for reducing inflammation, and then overall how it can be a stress reliever in one's life. And in the end, those are my products. My products are based around all of that right there. So I found that the people in these small settings dictated my product. So if I feel inflammation and I have knee surgery and all that, and inflammation is an issue for me, and I get tennis elbow and all that. So I designed a product that was great for digestive and for inflammation, but I was going to do it for myself, but the more I talk to people, the more I realized that that's what they're looking for. So that I think that
it's a great kind of product development cycle that you have, or opportunity you have, actually getting out and talking with people, understanding where their mindset is, where their needs are, and then being able to design and develop products based on what you're learning from these intimate gatherings. Because it's kind of a conundrum in this cannabis space because there are, all these kind of restrictions, or at least, difficulties in doing larger, market research and data gathering, but also because of the stigma and because of the, people's kind of resistance or hesitation to want to engage publicly in these kind of conversations. This intimate setting is a great way, I think, to actually get that market data, that customer data that you need to design these products.
Yeah, no question. And, Bruce, you and I both come from, a business background and with being entrepreneurs. And we entered, probably in our last business or businesses, entered a space that had history. And we could definitely look back on numbers and trends and everything that had happened, even though that when I started Argington, there was really not a mini modern movement that had ever happened but furniture had been made and children's furniture had been made. But this industry is brand new. Yeah. So and we don't know. We have to pivot every single week. We don't know from legislation to farmers' ability to grow and how to grow, and whether we have a pest that's been introduced to a crop. Yeah. I mean, it's just literally. I have my co-packers who manufacture most of my products are in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And which is ironic because they're not a medical state, nor are they a CBD friendly state, nor are they recreational. Yeah. But because of Mitch McConnell, they are trying to transform the tobacco crops into cannabis crops. And I was with the farmers a few months ago. It was a sort of a symposium for farmers and growers, and my big takeaway was, and this is coming from, these are real generational farmers, is that we have lost 100 years in farming cannabis, or over 100 years. So the technology combine can't mulch the plant because it gets, the fibers destroy the blades and clog the combines. Yeah. So there's just little nuances, they're not little, but nuances like that they weren't prepared for, or they can't use the same pesticides. And we don't want to use pesticides on a product that we're using medically. Yeah. And we're touting it as the new medical advancement. Mm-hmm. So we have a long way to go, and the demand is probably going to be higher than we can meet. So I definitely, this intimate setting and seeing what people want and how we can supply them is definitely, I think, instead of just coming up with a business plan that's already existed and then just plug it in, it's really need to talk about, because it's going to be very specific, and we're going to have to be very careful. It's not going to be whether or not we use cannabis. It's going to be where we grow it and how we extract it.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, as you've developed the business, as you've kind of made these pivots, what were some of the more challenging or interesting things that you learned and changes that you had to make as you went and as the business grew and as you kind of figured out where you were going to focus the product? How I always find that every business has some crucible moments around decisions they have to make, choices they have to make that become important to the direction. What has happened with you, or what are the choices that you've had to make, and how have you made them, and how have they been difficult?
With my furniture company, I started out, it's interesting. The first time I'm talking about this, I think from this perspective, I started out with a wood shop in Williamsburg. It was more Bushwick, Brooklyn. And then as I grew, I would get new wood shops that were a little larger, and I'd staff up. And this happened for about 6 to 8 months. And eventually my demand got so large that I had to go overseas, both for cost and for volume, mass production. Yeah. And in this space, my knowledge in product, I immediately went to co-packers. I went to, somebody that can manufacture my product because of my knowledge. But in this industry, because it's a vertical space, I'm flipped. So if I want to ground myself and brand myself in a state, and I'm 100% and was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, but my feet landed here 17 years ago in Brooklyn, and I knew I was a Brooklynite from that time on. So I really consider myself a New Yorker. And to be able to be a cannabis New Yorker is really, really big for me. Yeah. I think New York is going to be one of the leaders in the industry. We have great land to grow on from Long Island to upstate New York. We definitely are liberal minded. We can make things happen. And I'm super excited to see where the industry goes in New York. And I want to be part of that. So I had to make the decision whether I was going to continue to be that sort of, and I'm not a middleman because I am the manufacturer, but to remove myself from what's kind of called seed to sale. So remove myself from the seed. And I thought I was, and I really wasn't that interested, even though it's another really kind of fun fact is that my uncle, I grew up in the summer times when I was little, my uncle had a cattle farm in southern Missouri. Mm-hmm. So I was always around this farming lifestyle in the summer. So I thought, there's no way I'm going to get back to that. And here I am. I applied for about 6 months ago for a license to be a manufacturer of CBD in New York, and I was granted it. And they've only given, I think right now in my categories, only 29 licenses. Yeah. And so I now will start working directly with the farmers. So my really big goal now is, I guess sort of the new phrase is not farm to table. What is it? It's soil to mouth. Yeah. So what's really important to me, and in this space, and we're going to see a lot of Wild West stuff happening, is that what I can offer my customers is, just like I did with my furniture, pesticide-free, organic, and it meets every criteria. So almost like a, what is it called? I'm trying to think of the name of it that they do in the wine industry where it's the top of organic. I'll think of it here in a minute.
Okay.
But anyway, so that to me is the most important part of what I have to offer and what I have to give. And so I think that back to your original question is definitely, I was seeing myself on a path. I had a business plan. And then I decided, no, I think getting back to the root and working with the farmers and setting up manufacturing and being really concentrated on New York manufacturing. And I think that would be the most important thing for me right now in business.
And so I think the interesting thing about that is I think every business, particularly at early stage, struggles with these kind of choices. And I find the faster you want to grow and scale a business, the more specific you need to become and the more focused you need to be on, both your customer and your product and what part of the kind of value chain you want to be focusing on in terms of applying value. And I think it's really interesting in this case, the geographical focus, because I do think geography is such a huge factor in this market right now. Where are you producing? Where are your customers? What part of the value chain are you going to play in will define a lot of where your restrictions are in terms of, obviously the federal and state legislation issues. So I think that's great. So tell us a little bit more in terms of where with this new license, with this ability to actually process product, where is your product strategy going? Where do you see the market going? I don't know if you have anything specific around New York, but where you see the cannabis world kind of heading over the next 12, 24 months, things that you think we should be on the lookout for or keep an eye on?
Well, so the world of CBD and the world of THC are so different. And I definitely think that to be on the lookout, I think within the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see recreation definitely take a front seat in New York. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think right now we're at a hemp initiative program. I think the license for me allows me to get ready to be able to say, I believe in whole plant. I believe in both using CBD and THC for different needs and different functions, whether even that's topical and there's no intoxicating part of using the THC necessarily all the time. You can use it topically and hit the receptors differently than using the CBD. So I think we're going to see a push for recreation. And also we have a lot of states around us that are turning rec, from Mass to all sorts of different encroaching, states on us for the legalization full force. Yep. So that's going to be an issue for New York. So be on the lookout for that. I think today I just heard that anybody in New York that had been prescribed opiates would have the right to be prescribed medical marijuana.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And for what reason? What was their thinking? Is that because it's an effective, less addictive alternative?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So that it's non-addictive, like you said, and that we would prefer. But a lot of people don't know right now that dispensaries, your insurance doesn't cover any of the costs of the marijuana, of the cannabis itself. It just allows you the right to buy it. So you still are getting, if you get an opiate prescription, it's paid for by your insurance. So I think we're going to start to see a little bit, and that's, having said that is going to start to force, I think, the insurance companies to take a look at this, because people are going to say, you're getting people hooked and we're giving an alternative and you're not paying for it. So then that, brings up the question of, are pharmaceuticals, is big pharma going to come in to this industry faster than we thought it was, and what kind of regulations are going to happen there? Yeah. So for the license, for me, I separate myself from, even though I really believe in the health attributes of my product, mine is food focused. So I'm not trying to compete with pharmaceutical. I'm just trying to say that I have a product that's lifestyle product.
Yep.
that you can use on a daily basis. It's easy. It's fun to use, and it's a overall body change. Whether that's you're using, say, if you use my coconut oil, you're going to have a totally different effect than if you use my ginger tincture. And if you use these things, over a period of time, maybe you'll have a different digestive system, or maybe you could reduce your sleep aid medication a little bit, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, interesting. So if I'm an entrepreneur or a business person interested in getting into the cannabis space, or I've started and I'm continuing to kind of find traction and grow my company, what advice, thoughts, suggestions would you give them that might help avoid some pitfalls and pratfalls in their path, things that you've learned that you wish you kind of knew earlier in your process?
Well, I think it's still so interesting that this industry, the things you can and can't say because you're worried about. Like right now, I'm trying to launch on one of my products on Amazon, and I had to relabel and reword my website to say, and I alluded to it earlier, hemp versus CBD. So.
And sorry, it was what, and what did you change it to?
It was CBD.
Okay.
And then I changed all the verbiage to hemp. Huh. And I had to go scrub that website so deep that there couldn't be an article that I had cited that mentioned CBD. Yeah. Amazon was completely fastidious about, they absolutely would not sell CBD products. They will sell hemp, but they won't sell CBD. And we all know it's a euphemism.
Yeah.
So, and the same went for me getting a financial institution for my order processing and for my banking. So if I had known this from the very beginning, I would have, all of my literature would have said hemp. Mm-hmm. I would have educated people on the difference in industrial hemp and medical hemp. And I would have tried to come up with my new approach to marketing the plant, because in the end I had to change everything. I now have an financial institution that I bank with. I have an order processing, but I had to go through 6 months to a year or 2 years of jumping through hoops to get there and redoing, and it costs money to redo everything.
Yeah.
So that was and that's a big issue right now for people currently in the cannabis space.
Yeah, I hear that again and again, and unfortunately, it's a misstep early can take a while to resolve. I mean, people are still fairly sensitive and about the federal regulations and how it impacts them. So having a good strategy, getting good advice, having a good team, legal and otherwise, around you to guide you is important. So,
if I just a really like a big follow up would be that there are going to be so many CBD and then when we become more than 9 states, or we're 10 rec now, 9 or 10 now, that there's everybody and everybody and their grandmother is going to get into the cannabis space. So you're not going to know what products to trust. You're not going to know where it's coming from. But if you really do believe in what you're doing and you've got a great product or you have a great vision, right now is the time to brand. So just concentrate on making that brand as solid as possible. Create a really small following. Doesn't have to be, again, we're creating the industry. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be to go out there and make your millions right away or get hundreds of thousands of customers. Start grassroots because we can.
Yeah.
And that's an exciting time to be in an industry that you can do that.
What? Yeah, I think, and that's a good point. It's very much about establishing beachheads, getting a early following, and then as this market kind of changes and grows and matures, that's going to serve people well. And I think the branding is really important too. I think that's the one thing I certainly have noticed is, a big difference between, a cannabis, sort of a pot culture brand approach versus, a more mainstream cannabis, both recreational and medical. The branding and stuff has really evolved a lot. So, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch it. So we're just about at time. I want to make sure if people want to find out more about you, about Baked at Home, what's the best place to get more information? www.jennysbakedathome.com. So it's JENNY
at JenniesBakedAthome, JenniesBakedAthome.com. And that's my email. And then the www is the website.
Great. And I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can get to them. Jenny, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm excited about the new things you're doing, and I'm excited to see where things go.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you so much for hosting this podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You've been listening to Thinking Outside the Bud with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at thinkingoutsidethebud.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at thinkingoutsidethebud.com/newsletter.